I hope
Greeting.
somebody else join us today. For now, we have Naga. Thank you, Naga, and
Thank you, Jim.
Insan. So how's your day?
Is that for Inzan?
It can be. My day is okay. It's cold up here in Massachusetts. It's to use Celsius, guys, probably -2 or 3, somewhere in that vicinity. It's below freezing, whatever it is.
That's good. Here it's just a little bit cold here in Japan. So, well, let's get to the point. As always, I don't really make a prepare a previous speech because I like to be, on the fly. It's more fun, to. But of course, there is a general idea about what we're gonna discuss today. Today, the name it's quite attractive, right? Santa and Buddha, right? Santa versus Buddha. And why did I choose uh, the name Santa and Buddha? Well, really, I choose Santa um, just randomly, not specifically because of a specific reason, right? But it's a good example because I remember my childhood. So in in this case, we are going to discuss the myths and uh, and the realities and when and how a myth is valid, is good, or is not. Um, Many Buddhists, the secular Buddhists, discard right away all myths. All myths, all non-reality should be discarded. I think myths um, play a good role in the upaya, and the upaya for the people that doesn't know what is the expedient means. That means that you can say things that are not quite real, or you can even plainly, as the Lotus Sutra says, you can lie in order to help the other people. And so some myths are created, and let's see if when it's good to believe in them and when it's not. The problem is when you keep clinging as reality all the time, and they might divert you from what is the real goal, the real point. Everything, upaya, myth, not reality, teachings, dharma, everything in Buddhism is pointing to one place, which is the important place, the end of suffering. So,
Come.
mm, in one way, I was mentioning Santa because let's leave aside all the obvious bad things about it, about the, all those marketing and uh, all that consumer media stuff. But let's see just to the original idea. In my experience when I was a kid, I could understand um, some things that for me weren't obviously bad. Like don't move this thing to this place, or don't do this, don't do that. I couldn't really understand. I couldn't discern, and sometimes it's hard for a kid to stop doing it, even if the parent says don't do it. So they used to tell me, because I believe in Santa. I really believe. And they told me, you need to be nice in order to have your presents. I have the reward in the December 24th night. By the morning on 25th, it's gonna be in the Christmas tree. So that really pushed me to behave nice, and it helped. It helped. The only the other question here is, there is a point when you can tell, when you don't need anymore to believe in Santa, to behave or not behave, right? So before, if they told you right away the reality that your parents are Santa, it's more easy to fall in misbehaving, because they will ultimately give you a present. So there is that figure of Santa, that's the upaya. But there is a point when you need to know the reality. And the truth is, there is no guy that flies in reindeers and stuff like that. So there is a balance. Even in Buddhism, there is a balance. It's not as radical secular says that all the beliefs and all the upaya should be totally discarded. All those are rituals and things that if you test it scientifically, they will not happen, or they really don't exist, right? They say that they should be right away discarded, but I think there is a balance. They can serve a purpose, and the big question is, which one serves a purpose and which ones no, right? That's why the meditation is for. That's why the Buddha gave us that tool, that powerful tool that is meditation. The Buddha never said, okay, I'm going to write down or I'm going to say many things and you believe it. And that's it. And whatever it is, you have a blind faith and that's it. No. He knew. He could foresee that in time, many things can change. Some writings can be lost. Some writings can be changed to self-serving purposes, because at the end of the day, we are humans. It's naive to think, or you need to have a blind faith to believe that everything exactly word by word that the Buddha said in the Pali Canon is there exactly, right? So that is why the Buddha gives us that tool, which is meditation, to discern by yourself. It's not about just the blindly belief. So, well, I can extend more, but let's give a little bit of chance to speak to Insan. But before, welcome, Denny. Oh, he show up.
Hi.
Yeah,
oh,
there he is.
Yeah, I'm experiencing some issues with my modem, so I tried already like 5 times to connect. Hopefully this time will be stable.
Welcome.
Welcome. So, Insan?
Well, I was giving this some thought leading up to this. The myth and legend thing, like we mentioned before, the parables and legends and them being teaching tools. There's in the Western perspective, because that's all I honestly have, there's the heaven and hell, there's the Santa bringing presents, or, here, if you're bad, he leaves a piece of coal in your stocking. I don't know how universal that threat is, but I suppose you could say that kids have a certain level of understanding, and when it's appropriate for them to be told, eat your vegetables or Santa won't bring you any presents this Christmas, that serves a purpose at that point. Just like, I don't know, the Buddha in the Lotus Sutra saying, oh, the house is on fire, you've got to come out. You know, it serves a purpose. And a lot of the teachings in general, you know, they're geared toward people of different capacities. You know, you don't start in with the Avatamsaka Sutra to somebody who's just walking in off the street and, you know, thinks that the Buddha is like a big fat guy who you rub the belly of for good luck. You know, you start in with some more basic teachings, you know, the Four Noble Truths or whatever. And maybe you need to play into some of the stereotypes a little bit. Maybe you need to say, yeah, okay, come meditate, and you'll become calmer and more relaxed. And that's fine for somebody who's just walking in off the street. Just like saying, you know, be nice or Santa won't bring any presents to you, right? And then eventually, as, you know, people's practice grows and their capacities increase, then you can start hitting them with some of the more advanced teachings, if you want to call it that, or some of the aspects of the teachings that will point at their true nature. You know? Thoughts?
Yeah, exactly as you said. There is a really important role in all the cosmogony and myths and stuff. It's an important pedagogical role. And the thing is, the problem comes when the people start taking everything literal, or having blind faith on it, and totally the opposite of the embracing the I don't know, right? When there is some stuff like, for example, let's say you go with the realms of existence, like the realms, the Buddhist realms, and there is actually people that believes that there is a realm, there is another dimension, or whatever you wanna call it. Let's say the hell, right? Where is with the terrible place with many kind of illnesses and things, or you have that realms with a lot of hungry ghosts, etc., etc. By believing that, you will discard that those realms are in this very reality, in the mind. For example, as I was mentioning that you posted that very recently about that samurai when came to the priest, and the priest make him angry, and when the samurai was very angry, he says, "There is the gates of hell." And when the samurai got humble and say, "Oh, I'm sorry," he says, "There is the gates of heaven." So the hell happens in your mind when you let the anger goes, and or when you start to consuming many things and want to buy just because of buying. In that moment, it's you are like a hungry ghost. So all those realms can happen in within yourself in this moment, in this life. So, well, I don't want to extend too much about it because the hangout is not about the realms and how they work or not. What I'm trying to say is when you discard all these real tools, that if you discover that the meaning, what do they mean within your psychic and within your mind, you discard it if you really believe that they are actually physical planes in another dimension. That's one problem. Another problem when you totally believe when you blind believe, it's you start to discard. Yeah. For example, you can say, well, some people say only this. The Buddha says this. The Buddha says this book is the real word of Buddha. Whatever book, this sutra, it's a very new sutra, is not by the Buddha. Somebody else thought about it, so it's not useful. Why? Because because they put the Buddha as a kind of a superhuman being. So they say that the real Buddha, that superhero, did this, and these other writings was written by normal humans, so they cannot be even remotely compared with these old writings. So you fall into those problems when you make a deity of a Buddha, and among some other things. But well, I'm talking too much. Dennis.
I mean, what kind of both in Zen and yourself are stressing is a bit the idea of deities and heavens and hells are for I would say preliminary understanding or a way to get into the teaching, and then people might evolve and get more subtle or less clinging to this sort of myths and realities. I would say it does match the classical categorization in Tibetan Buddhism about the three types of person, which is like the lower scope, where people are very much concerned about their own cessation of suffering and their own happiness. So they do care about hell and heaven. And then the intermediate level would be about cultivating the bodhisattva path, so you start seriously considering helping others. And then supposedly the wider scope is about the perfection of wisdom. But then you can start talking again about the three bodies of the Buddha, for example. And so although initially we might think that the heaven and hell's narratives are all about people who are just new in a way in the philosophy, and that they are just analogies, like you were describing the hungry ghost, for example. We can see it as an analogy of a mental state. I would be careful about defining this as just a lower level of practice or naive level or something like this, simply because it does reappear later in the practice. And I think at times it's used to just stress some renewed effort in the practitioner. I mean, we do have this classic debate in Buddhism about is the Arahant selfish and the Bodhisattva not so selfish, things like this. I think part of the myths and ideas about, well, are you a god yet, in a way, is a way to push the practitioner and say, well, whatever the level of attainment you got, And even if you're an arahant, well, you're not a god yet, and maybe you can do more. And I think that's very useful as a way to remind people that, in a way, yes, there is a reality, and there's no point making narratives and stories about it. But in another way, it's useful to remind them that this reality is not fixed. And in a way, when you ask the question, are you a god yet? It's not so much about asserting you have superpowers, are you tapping into them? But it's more like, well, keep looking. It's like maybe there is something you're not tapping into yet. And because maybe if you could mold matter, you would have an extra way to teach. But if you say, well, this is not reality, you might miss it, actually. And on some occasions, that might make a difference. An example I might use among the superpowers that are listed directly in the canon is mind reading. So from a realistic perspective, mind reading is not possible. And we should just discard the myth. Now, in another sense, it might seriously look like it's possible. And I've used that myself. It's simply because you listen really to the person, and that person is leaking a lot of information without even being conscious of it. And so they are leaking in their way of talking, but also in how they dress, how their attitude, you know. And so you might end up telling them something about themselves where they're like, oh my God, how the hell does he know that? Did he just like spy me on the internet or something? You know, it's like, it feels like mind reading. And actually it's just, you're in front of that person and you're just using all the information you have right here, right now. But it does feel like mind reading for that person. Now, if you discard the myth, in a way, you're discarding this potential that maybe you're able to read the mind, but it's just the label is not the wisest one. But in a way, you can tap in the mind of the other person. And so we have to be careful about sometimes the labels are a bit caricatural, but maybe there's some kind of reality behind it. I mean, Julio, you said it yourself. I mean, the whole point is to keep don't know, but I think it's important to also say don't know about the superpowers and not just reject them as
yeah, exactly. You arrive a little bit late after in the first things that I said. That exactly I mentioned that there is in one side those radical secularists. Not all the secularists are radical, but some of them want to right away discard totally everything that that is not secular. And I was saying that it's not that's not the middle way as well. I mean the upaya and as you say, those myths are play their role, and they are necessary. Yeah, the thing is just make the balance. Like a balance is the most difficult thing, but to reach that balance, that's precisely why that the meditation tool is. The thing is always keep the I don't know mind. Of course, you have to apply the I don't know about all that stuff as well. Of course, there is some things like you feel more plausible or more or less possible than others, or something, you know, right? Like too much imagination. But now let's go with the Buddha itself. That I say the Buddha of flesh and bone. I'm not sure if in the English you have that expression to say, because in Spanish you say that like a person of flesh and bone. That means that it's a person and just a person, right? I don't know if in English that saying it's can be accurate, right?
Yeah.
So I think that it's important as well to see the Buddha as a human. Of course, if you see him as a human, that doesn't mean that you're just believing in a random guy. You are not saying that he was a dude that has an idea, and you say, "Oh, I like that idea. I'm gonna follow it." No, 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 no. Of course not. There's a lot of thought. You hear many things. You can hear many dudes, right? But only not all of them will ring in that form that you thought about it, and everything makes sense. Everything is consistent, and then you meditate, and so you say that this is the guy, right? This person, it's like of course, like a very, very brilliant human, but human nonetheless. The moment that you strip the Buddha of humanity, you start to cling in an image of like a super being. When you make a super being, I think that it is dangerous because it can make you lazy. It can say you can say, "Oh, I just like, let's say I did this too much, but I'm not a Buddha. I'm just a human, right?" If you say like, "Oh, I can't reach, I cannot end my suffering because I'm a human," but the moment that you believe that the Buddha was human, that moment you can believe that you can do it, that you can reach to the state of the end of suffering. Of course, we don't know how gifted was the Buddha or whatnot. Of course, he was an extraordinary human, but I think that putting him above humans, like a more than a human, it's a dangerous thing. It's you start to clinging on certain, as I was mentioning before, that they say, "Oh, this is what's written by the Buddha." To be more precise, many people says, "Okay, the Pali Canon is by the Buddha," and you have all those Mahayana sutras that wasn't written by the Buddha. And in reality, it's very possible that most of the Mahayana sutras was written way after the Buddha and not by the Buddha. But the moment that you say you're practical and you can understand that there can be another humans that can reach a very, very high state, you say, "Who cares? Who cares if you don't cling about it? Has to be this. You're not super picky. If something helps you to end your suffering, who cares if it was written by Mickey Mouse? I mean, don't cling on that image. Don't make a deity and say only this person, so I will blindly believe." Who cares as long as it helps me to suffer less. To the end, it gets me closer to my end of suffering. Is not many people jumps right away when, for example, Danny writes something and everything that makes sense, and it helps you to in your work for ending suffering, and then somebody says, "But you're just your opinion. You are not the Buddha, so therefore whatever you say is not valid." So I think it's important to put the Buddha into the human context. If he eats something bad, he will have diarrhea. He
Or
sometimes
die.
he can have a back pain, and all his day can be so difficult to get through, and for sure he will struggle maybe less than a unprepared human, but as a human, you know, he will struggle to give a good speech. Well, he has a back pain. He's not like boom, he gets those superpowers and the pain, boom, gone, and then he starts shining, and you know, he was human. That's the point in when I say, that's what I try to say when it says the Buddha of flesh and bone. Insan.
So Naga has a couple of questions up here. And maybe we should do the second one first because it has more to do with what we've just been talking about. So her question is, if so, then why do we have temples for Buddha? And what I would say, first off, is that we don't have temples for Buddha per se. We have, excuse me, temples for Buddhists. And that's more of just a place where members of the Sangha can assemble. We take refuge in the Buddha, we take refuge in the Dharma, and we take refuge in the Sangha. And we, as members of a Sangha, such as this one even, we're here to support each other's practice. We're here to behave in such a way that you know, we'll act as bodhisattvas and try and through right action, through right speech, right view, and so on, help other people to alleviate their suffering, if only for a moment, you know. So I think that, you know, we don't have to put it in terms of there's a temple for the Buddha and we go and worship the Buddha. I mean, I have immense respect for Shakyamuni Buddha. I have great admiration for him. He went through a hell of a lot more than I have in order to, you know, reach the goal that he had set out for himself. You know, let's face it, he was deeply in a state of dukkha before he sat under the tree and, you know, he attained his thusness. Okay? But he was, as you said, he was a guy. He was a guy who had a home, and he had a wife, and he had a kid, and he had whatever, you know, concerns there may have been with them. But they were there. And he was in a state where he thought, no, there's got to be something else out there. Look at all this old age, sickness, death, birth. This is causing everybody to suffer. So, you know, he took it upon himself to come up with this answer to, you know, this universal question of suffering, how to end it, can it be ended, how do you end it?
Exactly. You can admire the Buddha, as I do as well. You know, I have a deeply admiration for that guy or that dude, like somebody said. That's okay. I have deeply admiration for him and deep respect, and sometimes you can have a reverence towards an image of the Buddha, just like showing the respect for the teacher, because at the end of the day, Buddha is the teacher of all Buddhists. But what happens when you go so far as I don't remember which government, you know, those Buddhist countries that declare that they will be punished by jail if somebody desecrates an image of the Buddha. And they even issue a protest, diplomatic protest for some European countries that was using the image of the Buddha in T-shirts, and because they you know, when that respect and reverence for a teacher should, you know, transpass your personal preference, and you see others, and you expect everybody to respect your teacher or the image of the Buddha as you do. You know, even Buddhists do that. So that really happened. I don't know, it was in the news 2 years ago, I think. I believe it was, you know, this is like only 2 or 3 countries with Buddhist governments. But it happens. It really happens. So that's why I think it's very important to always keep in mind what the Buddha said. You know, like to not cling in just the image and put the image or the figure of the Buddha more important than your own work. He's just a tool. He was a teacher. You can admire him, you can love him, but precisely getting angry and expecting everybody to harbor the same feelings to you, or at least respect that, to expecting all the other people, is going against what he really taught. Yoti, sounds like you want to say something.
Can I add something?
Yeah, for sure, sorry.
Again, I guess I'll be the one on the side of divine on this call. I agree at first with this idea that we basically need to see our nature as being the same as that of the Buddha. And I mean, we can relate that to the Buddha nature doctrine, but it doesn't have to be. It can be like we see the Buddha as a human, and we see ourselves as a human, therefore we have the same nature. If we see the Buddha as some kind of immanence of the divine, of something magical in the world, then we have to see that we have this divine as well. We call it life or whatever, right? I mean, a lot of people can, in a way, connect with, let's call it the sacred in themselves. They don't do so constantly, but from time to time they can feel that there is a potential there is an ability to actually change the world, which we could call divine in a way. So I would agree that we need to see we have the same nature of the Buddha. Now that doesn't mean we limit the understanding of what it means to be human. And in that sense, I think the names the Sutra gave to the practitioners starting to get attainments is quite interesting, because I mean, it's usually translated by noble ones, and I think it's quite important. It's like, as a human, you can actually grow and become a sort of better human. You don't need to assert that you change your nature and that you become a god, but in another way, there is actually this idea that human is not fixed. It's not, the boundaries are not that solid in terms of what we can do. So I think it's important, as you said, it allows to say, well, if the Buddha did it, so can I. That recently with one of my students, and reminded that I needed that student to see themselves as having the same nature as me. Otherwise, I can't teach. I can't lead by example. I can't do anything if the person decides that, oh well, I can do this and they can't. Even if it's an unconscious barrier, it has to be very, like, that barrier has to be torn down, so that then I can lead by example. Yeah, I'll stop there for now.
So
That's okay.
Naya also had a
before somebody mentions something, just let me just a little say something very quickly. that somehow I cannot enable the questions and answers window. It says if it is disabled. If somebody can enable, please do it.
No, it
No,
has to be done
I'm
beforehand.
asking I asked the people that can be watching. Well, right now, if we have some viewers, right? You can ask in the Sangha Alive comments. I'm looking at them in the split window, so you can ask whatever you want. So, well, sorry, Insan, continue, please.
Okay. Naga had another question from earlier about isn't behaving for Santa the same as practicing the precepts? And just as a quick refresher, the 5 lay precepts are to refrain from killing, to abstain from stealing, abstain from sexual misconduct, to refrain from false speech, and to abstain from intoxicants which cause heedlessness.
I see a lot of similarities about the Buddhist precepts and the Santa. Why? I mean, of course, it's in a very different level, but you can see the Santa stuff in a very low level. You know, your parents put the precepts. The parents tell you if you don't do this or that. You know, they have their own house set of rules. If you break this rule, you will be naughty. If you complain with the rules, comply with the rules, you will be nice. So Santa will bring you presents or not. It's quite similar to the grow-up version of like that is hell, and you have 10 commandments, or there is many realms, and you have the precepts. So I think you can compare that in that context. Of course, we are not talking about the Santa idea in general, because that idea is way weaker, right? With less thought and very very vulnerable to exploit it as a commercial thing. But we're not talking about that. We're just talking about in the house. The parents, in my personal experience, they use that. They use Santa as a reward or not reward. For me, was punishment if there were no the idea to not having presents. I always had presents. Thankfully, my childhood, I always had those toys that I wanted. Well, not always what I wanted, right? But I had toys, but it worked. It worked. My parents had a set of rules, and they say, you behave, Santa will come. You misbehave, Santa will not come. Independently, if they don't always wear toys in there. But I think about the question, I think it's pretty similar.
I think one of the things that would differentiate them is that when mom or dad says, don't put the cat in a vat of boiling water, that's pretty rigid. There's no like two ways about that. And I suppose from a precept standpoint, you could also say that would probably be applicable unless you're talking about Nan Quan and, chopping a cat in half. But the precepts are somewhere stronger than suggestions, but not as rigid as like commandments would be, or laws, right? It's not do not kill, it's I vow to abstain from killing or to refrain from killing. There may be certain circumstances in which the appropriate form or the necessary form of action at that moment may involve actually having to take a life. I don't know. I haven't been in that situation, so I can't say with any certitude whether it's right or wrong, or how I would behave in that sort of circumstance, right? There may be times, you know, for me personally, I don't partake in intoxicating beverages, let's say, as just like a flat out thing. I don't drink. There are other people who would say that having an occasional glass of wine or whatever with dinner, and if it doesn't lead to heedless behavior, if it still maintains clarity of thinking, then it's okay. The precepts are much more malleable. They're much more situationally oriented. Like in a given set of circumstances, what is the correct way to respond to a situation? You know, the precepts are a guide. They're certainly a good place to start to head in a certain direction that's going to be based around appropriate behavior, but they're not like etched in stone, never violate them under any circumstances sorts of rules. One of my favorite stories is about Hyo, the Korean monk whose teacher, I guess, you know, brought him to a brothel one night and plied him with liquor, and Hyo, who had been very attached to the precepts he had taken as a monk, was basically forced by his teacher to become, let's say, a little less attached to them on one night anyway, because his practice that was so etched in stone about I must not do this was becoming another attachment for him. It was a hindrance. He was not going to move anywhere closer to realizing his true nature if he maintained his attachment even to what he thought of as appropriate behavior.
Yeah, I think one of the aspects of the precepts, which I mean, all teachers insist on this, and part of this Sangha Alive we did probably almost every video, is to remind people that the precepts are for training purposes. And basically, it is a tool to, well, pay attention. So you have a set of boundaries that you will regularly meet. So for example, it's like, don't get angry. Well, you meet that one pretty often. Don't drink. The occasion will be met pretty often. Full speech, very often. So it's just a set of rules which end up being met very often. I mean, even do not kill once you get mosquitoes around or whatever. It's a regular occurrence. And I just to kind of incentivize you to pay attention to what you do. And from that, you can learn about causality. And then, in a sense, once you understand causality, the rules are somehow not so much needed, because you can better understand how the consequences will unfold. So you don't need to be told so much, be careful about this, be careful about that. Funnily enough, that connects as well a bit to our divine nature again. And it has to do with when we do something even small, it can have like tremendous, very wide-ranging consequences. And if we limit ourselves as human and my little life and only affect me or those around me, somehow we miss quite a lot of the causal unfolding. And I'm sorry, I'm talking a bit about myself in this call, but it helps me to stay grounded in this conversation without going in the high convoluted realms. Recently I was helping one of my students, and then that had consequences on the partner of that student. No, I don't know the partner directly, right? It is an unfolding. So I plant a seed, and when this seed kind of reaches people I don't even know. And these people, really, in that context, visibly that's helping, which is good. But in a way, I could say, in some sense, I'm God here, right? I do some very small act, and it is far-ranging. And these precepts, I think, are very important in a way to see that. They do actually help us to see how causality unfolds, and not just in some way or selfish. It does unfold very far. So there is a connection, I would say, very much with this duality between being just human and being divine in some sense.
Yeah. So the whole the main point of this the main point of this hangout is exactly that whatever reason I don't think there is anything in the Buddhism that should be taken as totally literal and totally that you cannot move like a writing on stone, as you say, because of course there is also people that take the precepts as they should be followed as they say exactly, and there is no context where you can not doing them or doing differently. So and it happens quite a lot. So that is the whole thing about this kind of about when I say myths, right? I'm not really trying to go into the supernatural conversation about supernatural or reality or things. When I say about the myths, it's I mean, you can create a myth out of the human without putting superpowers, right? You can see that this human was like this and that, and then you have a fixed idea on how somebody was, right? Like you say, many people, let's say, Gandhi, right? Gandhi was like this and that and that and that, and then you fix an idea, and then you act accordingly. So not only about people, but about the canon, about the sutras, about the precepts. And when everything is taken literally, I think it started a little bit of a problem, from little bit to a big problem. So exactly like that, when you were mentioning about the how flexible, both of you were mentioning about how flexible are the precepts. For some people, it's very obvious that they are flexible and they are very well developed and made for what was the reason. But there is people that take them just literal as a carved on stone, and because and you say, but why? You can not totally follow one precept in one, depending on the context, depending on the situation. But I say no, because it's what Buddha says. Do you know more than Buddha? So it takes the precepts literal. It takes that the Buddha reify, and so everything becomes a closed dogma, and there is no room for your own thought. There is no room for your own questions, opinions, liberations, whatever. It's because they say, because the Buddha said, and it's written in here. Why you have to interpret it? Why you have to put it in a context? Why you have to modernize it? It's there, and you say, but what? No. The Buddha, because the Buddha knew you are not the Buddha. You are just a normal person. So that's the point of what I was trying to say exactly. Yoti, you were smiling a lot when I was talking about the precepts taking it literally. What do you have to say about it?
I have a small question. It's like, if you were to aspire to be something unique or even divine, why not place a teacher in that place and then aspire to be that? I know there is this sense of separation that you are human and this person is divine, but then it can be an aspiration that you can be divine too. It just this initial first step of separation, and then you move towards divinity itself. Could it not be a means of aspiring to be like the Buddha, but placing the Buddha just above you? Maybe even supernatural, it's fine, it's okay. Can it be a possibility?
Yeah, maybe it was a little bit confusing when I say divine and humans. What I try to say it's when you divinize the Buddha, divinize it in the way that you say like you are not divine and Buddha is divine. You cannot be divine because he is divine. You know what I'm trying to say? It's if Buddha was divine, if Buddha could really make a super have a beam laser of that can just light many words, then so do you. You know. So he was a if Buddha was a human, you are human. If Buddha could do this, therefore you could do that. What I mean, it's the moment that you separate the Buddha from the rest of the humans and say that he was different, not only about divine. Of course, if he was divine, we have the divinity. You can say that everybody has a Buddha nature, but as long as you say everybody can do what the Buddha did, it's okay. When you put the Buddha in a totally different level, when you separate the Buddha from the human, when you say the Buddha stopped being human, and the Buddha has something that you cannot reach because he was so special that he was not human. That separation, that's when the problem starts. When the people think that nobody else can be like a Buddha or have a good idea or something, you know, like that's the problem. Or when somebody puts him give them, you know, for me was the most dangerous superpower attributing to the Buddha. It was not levitation or beams or teletransportation. The most dangerous feature attributed to the Buddha is that many people believe that he was all knowledgeable, that he already knew about, you know, like how possible is that he knew that about cells, about atoms, about, you know, like that he has automatically all knowledge that you can have and you could have in the future. You know, like that's the most dangerous things, because sometimes in the modern world, like there was no way that even the Buddha, being the Buddha, there was no way that he could know some things about for example, now that that all those scans that knows about how the brain works in the cellular level and everything, and hormones and this and that, he didn't know that. He was a very, it was a very, very clever way to figure out how the thoughts are made of, how they work, how it works, but he didn't know how that biologically worked, right? So now you can come up with that and make, and of course even almost more than 2,000 years after, Buddha still makes sense, even with those new discoverings, but that doesn't mean that he knew exactly what's going on. So what I say, like that's very dangerous. The things that an illumination makes you automatically knows everything, and not only happens with the Buddha, that happens with Zen masters or everything. Like you say, like, oh, this is he attained he was awakened. So that moment you knows everything. You cannot ignore that. You know that's the point.
Yeah, interestingly, it was a later development to believe that the Buddha knew everything and was omniscient. Because initially, and it's made quite clear in the canon, one of Jain's teachers claimed to be omniscient. The Buddha refused to have a similar claim. What he claimed is that he knew about three things. And one was about his past lives, one was about how causality unfolds, and one was the fact that he was enlightened. I think there were like 2 or 3 more knowledges, notably about superpowers. But there was basically clearly a refusal to say, I know everything. And in particular, there was a refusal to say, I can see how karma will unfold forever. There was this idea that I understand how it unfolds, but from moment to moment, or potentially I can see tendencies from one life to the next. And tendencies are not certainties. But there's clearly no pretense whatsoever that the Buddha could see how you would be reborn after 1,000 rebirths. There are different aspects to this. One of it is that karma is unpredictable because of interferences with different karmic streams and also different laws of causality, including biology and physics. But overall, there was this idea that from the Buddha himself, that he did not know everything.
I believe
it resonates very well with the Zen approach of saying don't know. Okay, there is always something to look, and it's not a denial that you learn something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can know a lot, but there's still a way. There's still something to look for. There's still something that will be new, that will appear, and that you need to learn. Don't assume that that's it. The world is fixed, and that therefore you can know everything.
You have the, relative and absolute truths. You have the dualisms, right? If you're a student and you put your teacher up on some sort of pedestal, in the relative, as Josie said, it gives you something to aspire to. It gives you something, maybe a sense of hope, maybe encouragement that by continuing to practice, that you can more fully realize your own Buddha nature, or see your true nature, or become enlightened, or whatever, right?
Yes.
On the other hand, if you go into the realm of the absolute truths, then that's something altogether otherwise. I mean, is not only no student, no teacher, and no teaching to be done, and no teachings to be learned, but that's in the absolute. The absolute only exists within the realm of the relative, and in the relative, the teacher may know more about a certain subject than you do. And there is no justification because of, well, I'm already a Buddha, so I don't really need to do any of this stuff. There is work to be done. You can't just use like Buddha nature or the absolute truth as an excuse not to be diligent, to make the effort, to continue the practice, because there's certainly going to be room for growth. There's certainly going to be things that can be improved upon within the realm of the relative, and if that's what it takes, if it takes putting a teacher on a pedestal, or it takes putting the Buddha on a pedestal, or whatever it is, if it gets to that point where you're trying to arrive at,
Yes.
even if eventually you find out that there was no arriving to be done, then okay, it's another element of expedient means, of skillful means, of like, okay, this is going to break you out of your delusion.
It works. It works. I have tried it. It works.
Yeah, Naga, want to say something, Naga?
Yes. See, in India, they always have this guru, and they ask you, suppose you go to a meditation center, and then you learn, then they always ask you to take the name of the guru, like Ravi Shankar or Maharshi. So it's probably doing the same thing as taking the name of Buddha or Krishna. But for me, it's almost like you're taking another human being's name, you know. So I always left those centers. Whenever they ask me to take the name of the teacher, I always left it.
Well, in that sense, actually, if you take the name of a Buddha, you're not taking the name of another human being, because his name was Sakyamuni Gautama. I mean, Buddha fundamentally means awakened. So you're kind of appropriating a potential, maybe. But that's one aspect of our practice, that we don't actually individualize it so much, which is very consistent with the teachings about non-self. That we, in a way, focus on the functioning as a noble being, as an awakened being, but we don't so much focus on the identity. We accept that this is more loosely defined, that it is more narrative, and that it can actually change. That is dependent on the context, etc. So I see your point, but I would say it's one difference potentially of Buddhism is that we call it, I mean, even the way we call it is Buddhism, and it's not Sakyamunism. Or Gautamaism or something. We got out of this I take a kind of thing. We keep the inspiration, we keep hopefully the functioning, we keep the lessons, all of that, but we don't take a piece. and then I hold on to my piece because that's kind of like my relic or something, and I won't share it.
Julio, can I take your name? Every day morning.
Take the hamster's name.
In India, I went to Ravi Shankar's studio for like when I went to India. I did the whole course. And then the last day they told me I have to take the guru's name and his picture, and I just didn't show up. That was it.
Well, you can save me the ticket to US. And then speak my name.
And then you'll come here and
yeah.
Sure.
Also ecological. I'm gonna less contamination for flying. So well, it's already an hour and 10 minutes. It was very fun this time. Well, not that all the times is not fun, but I'm very happy to see all the members together. You know, there's always a Yoti, always Naga, and Inzan, always Inzan. Thank you, my friend. And a special appearance of Danny Wally, that it happens to move from one extreme time zone to another extreme time zone. The other times it was the complaint was because it was too late. And the last time it was because it was too early.
Yeah,
so I'm very happy to
come to the middle way.
Today that was really hard. Like I was helping somebody like last night at midnight. This call was like at 6 in the morning. That's a bit short for me. On top of that, it was like there were mosquitoes all night, so basically I did not sleep. So that's pretty rough. But I mean, I promised. I said I would come. So yeah.
I can see the sun rising from through your window.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 7 o'clock.
Oh, 7 o'clock. Here is 10:40 a.m. still.
It's always difficult to get up at 6 a.m.
Yeah, but it's
on Sunday.
yeah, difficult thing. Actually, I made it the 1 hour later than usual to allow to hope that then he can show up, because it's very difficult for me to fix the agenda, especially on Sundays, where it's the only day that I take out the family, and we usually go out at 11. But yeah, well, I'm happy that this time he could made it, and that thanks for showing up, you all, and thanks for Naga to stay. Naga always asks, can I turn it off after you go online? No, come on, stay. You're part of the Sangha.
So
You always text me before. So anyway,
Yeah, to you.
I just laugh, so there's no purpose. No, mine is gonna be just laughing, so there's no purpose.
Yeah.
Me being on it.
We can discuss this a little further amongst all of us, but I would like to suggest that in honor of Julio living in Japan, that perhaps December 6th, which would be December 7th for him, that we could have a Rohatsu special. We could decorate the Bodhi tree, we could sing some Rohatsu carols, have a regular old Enlightenment special. So that might be in 2 weeks if everybody is up for it. And maybe next week I'll have something, although I haven't gotten any responses from anybody so far. But anyway, I think we should probably wrap. So, I'm Inzan.
Yeah.
Thanks
everybody.
us.
Thank you the viewer. I don't know who is it, but and thank you the rest of the viewers that will watch. Hopefully, will watch on the non-live recording YouTube. And thank you for following this Sangha Alive. That we are making it. At least I didn't really thought that we will last so long, and looks like we will.
Don't last, Julio. Don't
worry. We made it to the end of the year, almost. Thank you very much, guys. See you around.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Namaste.